Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first episode of Tintswalo's Perspective. Tintswalo's Perspective is an OR Tambo School of Leadership platform that is dedicated to young people. It's a platform for the South African youth to share its experience in the last 30 years of our democracy, but also to express their vision of the South Africa that they envisage, and also share some of the work that they are doing in order to actively build that South Africa that they envisage. You know, a lot of young people are involved in a lot of things. And today we are going to launch this thing in order to ensure that we have a progressive conversation with young people. And we are privileged that we are launching this thing when we are celebrating the 31st anniversary of Comrade President Tambo's passing. This is a platform really dedicated to young people to share their experiences about this country, their experience of democracy, also their vision for a better South Africa. So, welcome to this first episode. And today we are joined by a special guest by the name of Molaodi Wa Sekake, who will really be sharing with us his philosophy of Socialism Nomunt'Omusha. He has written a book of 2 volumes on this philosophy. So today we'll be interrogating it further, but also we'll be getting to know the author himself and some of the work that he has been doing in order to practicalize some of the ideas that he has about South Africa. So I'm going to bring him to join me on the screen. You are welcome to share your comments on the platform and ask whatever questions that you need to ask. And then I'll be making sure that I am able to note all of those comments and ask whatever questions that you have for our guest. But I'm excited really that today we are launching this platform, and I'm excited that we have the kind of guest we have today to help us premiere this thing we call Tintswalo's Perspective. So without wasting any time, I'm going to call Comrade Molaodi to please open up his camera and join me on the screen. My brother, welcome to the platform. It's such a great pleasure to have you here today. I think my heart is full that we're kickstarting this particular platform with you. And I know that you are going to ensure that we set a very high tone so that we can get Tintswalo's perspective on 30 years of our democracy, what our future should look like, but more particularly on this philosophy of socialism, Nomunt'Omusha, because I think it's a fresh idea that we need to really interrogate and popularize amongst young people. So, welcome, my brother. I will allow you to introduce yourself, speak a little about the work that you do, and yeah, then we'll have a great conversation together. So, the floor is yours, Comrade Mlaudi. Please introduce yourself, and yeah. Please unmute. I think your mic is muted. Uh, yes, you can go ahead. I am struggling to hear you, my brother. I'm really struggling to hear you. I am really struggling to hear you, Comrade Mulaudi. Um, let me check if our viewers can hear you at home. Um, I'll just go on the platform and just check if our viewers can hear you. Please indicate if you are able to hear Comrade Mulaudi, because I'm really struggling to hear him from my side. Um, let's try again. Yes, Comrade Mulaudi, please go ahead. Comrade Mulaudi, we are really struggling to hear you, my brother. Um, can you please try to log in again? Please, I'm going to remove you. Please try to log in again, and then let's try again. We really apologize about that. We're just working out the technical issues. I think now we have Comrade Mulaudi back. My brother, welcome once again to the platform. Can you please try to introduce yourself? I think now we should be able to hear you. Yes, now we can hear you.
You can hear me now.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. No, thanks, my brother, for the platform, and also to thank the OR School of Leadership, the OR Tambo School of Leadership, for opening such a platform, especially, to reflect on the 30 years of democracy. I think it's very important because we normally take so many things for granted. And we normally believe that we have to continue life as normal without making a concerted effort to sit down, to pause, to take stock, and to see how far we have come, and how far we have come, basically, and what we envisage. So it's a very important platform that has been, offered to some of us to reflect, especially as young people who, not necessarily those who can give a proper or accurate account, who can add, one or two things in terms of how far and And I'm very happy here to make your that it's a reform, it's a insightful comments, without any fear or without any hesitation. So I'm here to make such reflections and also to reflect on our work that seeks to actualize some of these ideals that were fought for, that many people fought for. That should be the basis of our reflections and how far we have come. So I'm very grateful to be here, my brother. So as you have, like long bio, I don't have them. I'm just an activist and a person who's trying to make an impact in society, working, hand in hand with other people in my community, in spaces that I exist in spaces that I work in spaces that I live in, So basically, that is the long and short of who I am, and also as a spitter of words on paper, normally called a writer, which is too formal to be called a writer. But I always refer myself as a person who normally likes to reflect on society through pen. As to whether you refer to that kind of a person as a writer or an author or whatever, it's neither here nor there. But I normally make my reflections through the pen on paper. No, I'm happy to be on this platform to reflect on this milestone of our democratic era, and also to provide a critique of what could have done better, what we can to work on the gains that have already been, made.
No, thank you so much, my brother, for that introduction. I think I like the fact that you don't like to refer yourself in very formal terms, but I think we are all certain, those who have engaged with some of your work and know you for who you are, that indeed you are a writer, and not just a writer, but a very prolific one, who does not just write for the sake of writing, but is really interested in coming up with interventions to ensure that we build a better future, not only for ourselves but also for future generations to come. And we'll get to talk more about that. I think for now, let's just start by getting to know you. And the first question would be, where did your activism journey start? You refer to yourself as an activist. Where did your journey start, and what does it mean for you to be an activist, and what is some of the work that you've done in trying to express your activism in society, and maybe touch a bit on the kind of impact that it has had in society?
Well, I think I realized activists now in the space of activism. Um, you realize these things, you describe these things after the fact. What normally happens is that you commit yourself to a particular cause, and after some time, either you or other people refer to what you are doing as either a poet or a writer or a scholar or anything. So to be referred to as a writer, as a scholar, or as a professional for that matter, comes a result of what you are doing. So these are things that describe what you do. Because they describe what you do, they come after what you do. So you don't start by saying I'm an activist, therefore I'm going to be. You start by being active and then being seen and being known as an activist. So that's how it came. So I only realized that I was an activist after making a reflection of my work in different spaces, at university, in my own community, And I will tell you an interesting story, by the way, that, at some point, beyond activism, at a time when we were deeply reflecting on our activism and archiving our activist work in the form of a pen and a paper, at some point, when we were moving from one area to another, especially in Claremont, where my activist chief was cut, especially as far as political activism is concerned. We would move from one area to another, organizing people, organizing summits, trying to build networks that are going to empower young people, trying to give access to information. For example, when people want to go to university, when people want to open businesses, how to fight crime and all these things, because we grew up in communities where people wake up in the morning, go to work, come back late, and they are robbed and they are raped and all those things, So basically, my activism was informed by such conditions. So at some point, when we're moving from one point of our area to another, we would be accused of sex,
Comrade Molaodi, Comrade Molaodi, let me stop you there a bit. I think yeah, we can hear you, but there's a bit of a sound glitch. So I'm not sure if it's your network, because in the first instance we could hear you properly, but now there's this sound glitch. So maybe if you could move around where you are, so that we can get a better network. And then let's try again.
Okay.
Yeah, let's try again and see.
Oh, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh. Oh, okay. No, thanks. I don't know where I should take it off from where people lost it, But I'm saying these are descriptive terms, activist, right, and all those things. They come after the fact. I remember in my community, we used to move from one area to another, and we would be accused of young people who only use legs and arms, because we used to toy, protest, organize young people to demand certain things, We used to be accused nabantu abahlezi behamba, using arms, using legs and all those things. Not clicking, so to say. So our activism at the time, we only people who just move around, without adding any value in terms of knowledge, in terms of ideas, But at some point, one realized that it's fine. Maybe we have to take the responsibility of reflecting on our activism through the paper, because we were accused of people who found all those things. So then one can take the responsibility of reflecting the active experience through pen and paper, I didn't start writing political essays. I started attending poetry shows, especially at the center in Durban. We would go to poetry shows, listen to some of the people that we would their works, Bufelo, and many others, Miriam Tlayo. So that's it. So then a person took it first to say, it's okay, that if this is possible amongst the black people, then we may as well take the responsibility to reflect on our conditions, on our experiences through the pen. Ironically, at the time we took that responsibility to reflect through the pen and paper, we were accused as people who are only focusing on writing, who are not on the ground. So I'm sure you can realize the irony. In the first phase of our activism, we were accused of people who who use legs. At another level of activism, when we have taken the responsibility to reflect on our experiences through pen and paper, we were accused of people who just write, who are not on the ground. So these are some of the real experiences of our activism that we have gone through, that have cemented who we are and what we are and how we understand what we need to achieve going forward. So basically that is the long and short of it. So I cut my political activism, in particular in Claremont, as a member of the NC Youth League, but also belonging to different poetry sessions, poetry societies. Those who live in Durban know, art establishments that were existing back in your center and of the theater, your playhouse, and also there was a big
Comrade Molaodi,
festival organized by Ayanda from town, which was happening in Pavadio. So you have a lot of young people gathering around.
Comrade Molaodi, I don't know if it's your network
You can hear me.
or is this sound. Yeah, we can hear you, but there is a sound glitch every time you speak, and I suspect it has to do with your network. Maybe what we should do is switch off your camera and let's try that. Yeah, if you can switch off your camera, maybe. Yeah, but let's switch off your camera and see if we can't get you to speak quite well. But I got the gist of what you were saying, and maybe my audience will assist me in telling me whether even when I speak, the sound glitch still happens. But I got the gist of what you're saying, and in fact, when you say that we 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 get engaged in the struggle to transform society, and not necessarily defining ourselves as activists as we are engaged in that particular exercise. I can relate because you become part of the people who are interested in changing the way people see things or the way things are, and you only discover later that that was activism. And in fact, it reminds me of one of my favorite paragraphs in the policy deployment policy of the ANC through the eye of the needle, which says there are no already born leaders. Leaders are made out of the struggle to transform society. And I think that in itself defines what genuine activism is, because at that level, you are really interested in, changing society and not necessarily being uh, titled as an activist or as a comrade or whatever the case may be. So I really get what you're saying. But also, the other point that you're raising, which is very important, is that it would seem among activists, we don't understand the various forms of activism. That you could be an activist in the art space, you could be an activist through your writing, you could be an activist through various forms. I mean, there are people we call cultural activists who are artists. There are people who we call progressive writers who are really activists in the way that they write. They are activist lawyers, So it would be important that as we engage this concept of activism, we appreciate that it is multi-pro. There is no uh, one formula of how to be an activist. So I like how you raise these contestations of activism, and it may be something that we want to engage further. So now let's speak about the point at which you start writing, right? As to what leads you there, what leads you to say, I think my best form of activism, it's writing. I need to contest uh, in the battle of ideas through my writing. What informs that?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. I think the glitch is still there. You know what we should do? I think let me remove you. You join again, and let's try it. Um, I really apologize to the viewers. I think Comrade Mlaudi seems to be having some problems with his network, and that is really affecting, you know, the sound feedback. But let me try to add him. If we can't get it fixed now, we'll try and ensure that we try and work on it and post a clearer version of this thing. I hope that you are able to hear me. So I'm going to try and bring him back and see if we can hear him better. Comrade Mlaudi, let's try again. Comrade Mlaudi? Yeah, really, this network thing is really a serious problem, and I hope we're able to figure it out because we're just about to get to the nitty gritties of this thing. Um, Comrade Mulaudi, let us try again. Um, right now, we can't even get any audio from your side. Um, we are unable to get any audio from your side. Can you just please try logging out completely out of the platform and then try to use the link to enter again? We really apologize for this. Hopefully, we are able to resolve this because there's still a lot we need to get through with Comrade Mlaudi. It's just unfortunate that sometimes technology has some form of witchcraft that you can't control. Comrade Mlaudi, let's try again. Now I can't get any feedback. I can't get any feedback. Hence, I'm saying please log out completely out of the studio and then try to enter again. Um, so while we're still trying to sort out that glitch, I'm sure you are all aware that Comrade Mulaudi is launching his book. If you are not aware, I'm informing you that he's going to be launching his book. It's 2 volumes of Socialism Nomunt'Omusha, Socialism Nomunt'Omusha. It's happening on the 27th of April, which is Freedom Day, and it will be taking place at the Soweto Theatre. You're all invited to come and attend. There is an email which you need to RSVP. I'll share the email before the end of this session, where you can come in and be able to engage some of these ideas uh, in a bit much more detail and be able to get his book as well. He's back, so let me try to see if we can get him. Comrade Mlaudi? Oh, he's gone again. So, guys, this is Tintswalo's perspective, our Tambo School of Leadership platform meant for young people. Of course, we are just premiering this particular platform today. We will have challenges, but we will get better and better. Let us not despair. You're also welcome to pose your questions to Comrade Mlaudi. I can be able to see all of the comments that are coming both from Facebook as well as Twitter, as well as our YouTube channel. So you are more than welcome to share your thoughts. If there's young people that you know in your communities or in your field that are doing great things that you think are worth sharing on this platform, you're more than welcome to refer those young people so that we can reach out to them and have conversations with them. Comrade Molaodi is back. I hope this time around we
Yeah, I'm
won't be.
back. Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you, my brother. So before you got off the platform, I was asking you the question: when did you really discover, or take a decision to say, I am going to amplify my efforts of activism through writing? And what was going through your mind at that particular time?
Okay, thanks. I'm not sure if I heard the question properly, but I was saying initially that the link between my activism and writing, I was actually trying to establish the link between my activism and writing. That I did not just jump into writing, like, hey, this is what I would be interested in, or it's very interesting, or it's nice. So I wanted to establish the link between my activism, especially political activism, and my writing. My writings, which are in part politically reflective, culturally reflective, philosophically reflective, and ideologically reflective, So I wanted to establish that link so that whoever is listening has a sense that my writing is linked to my activism. It's not just, or it's not something that is isolated, that is something that is out there. It's as a result of my activism, and my activism is as a result of my experience in my community in different areas of the country.
Comrade Molaodi, please move around. Yeah, we could hear you. Now we're losing you. This network is really failing you, no?
Especially in my own community. So that's the thing I wanted to develop. So just to come to your question, it was not just like, hey, at go, I want to become a writer. It was as a result of the experiences that I've outlined, as a result of the encounters, as there are many people that I've come across in different spaces, where, whether at church, where you say, how do I give? Am I okay?
Yes, we can hear you now, but we keep losing you a bit. Continue.
Can you essence of the link own experiences and encounters? It's not something that is isolated from my so that's how I came about. So people are saying, hey, these are only writers, they don't understand. In fact, my works also are reflective of those experiences, that I don't just write from nowhere. I write as a person from a community, as a person who has friends, as a person who has lived with certain people in different spaces. So that's the essence of my writing. That's I write from the perspective of lived experiences, in as much as we infuse it with different political and ideological paradigms, but those paradigms are informed by our experiences on the ground, our experience, our encounters with other people in different spaces. So basically that is the essence of what I am doing, and the result of the work that is called books that I've produced, starting from 2002, Meditations from the Gutter, short stories, essays, and poems, coming to the 2 volumes of Socialism Nomunt'Omusha, taking the oath of revolution, that we're going to be launching over the weekend. So and in those works, I reflect on a lot of things, including what we are going to be dealing with today. Reflections on our democratic breakthrough, what has gone well, what has gone wrong, where we can improve. And I must say, I don't buy into the notion that nothing has been achieved. I don't buy into that. In fact, the very people who are saying nothing has been achieved, it's as a result of certain political rights, that they are able to even express, that, statement of saying nothing has been achieved. If it was another area, that expression itself would be punishable if it was not a democratic order that we have come to enjoy nowadays.
Let me interject there.
No,
I think you raise
so I don't buy into that idea that nothing.
allow me to interject just on that point, because I feel like you are raising an important point that, people tend to not appreciate the fact that, in as much as we have had challenges, but many things have improved over the last 30 years. And there are certain rights that they enjoy that even allow them to express their dissent, without any prejudice or without any form of suppression, which of course it's part of the democratic dividend that you and I can even have this conversation openly through an open platform and not fear that someone might come at night looking for us, harassing, our loved ones that we live with, simply because we might have expressed views that they don't agree with. Articulating that thought, I would like you to share your own lived experience of this 30 years before, we get to your philosophy of socialism Nomunt'Omusha, to say what has been your own personal experience. What are the things that you appreciate in this last 30 years? What are some of the things that you don't appreciate? And then lastly, how do we build from this to ensure that we can secure a better future that brings us closer to a non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, united, and prosperous South Africa?
Okay, no, thanks, my brother. Yeah, thank you very much. Look, when we shared this program with other comrades, there is a comrade of mine who penned something down and he sent me, and I just want to paraphrase his argument in that article. He actually says that you are enjoying, civic rights, for example. What we know that the freedom of association, that civil societies, even by the way, civil societies that are funded by external forces, are able to organize and to stake their political and civic rights. They are able to do as they want in the country. They are able to have programs. They are able to protest. They are able to go about their activities. These are some of the rights that we enjoy now that you cannot enjoy in any authoritarian, state, for example, where people could be able to tell the government off, where people could be able to say, "Look, I don't like this." In fact, to an extent of, I'm one of the sharpest, critiques of the establishment, especially given the new liberal outlook. But we must appreciate certain things that people are able to even go to an extent of, insulting government, without any repercussions, insulting, leaders without any repercussions, meaning going even beyond the bounds of, democratic rights that they have been offered. So what I'm trying to say is that there are certain things that we need to acknowledge, that we need to defend in actual fact, so that we are able to take the struggle forward and achieve the very goals of the process of liberation. So that is one of the things. But the other thing, personally, we do have access to facilities that we are able to we are able to access commercial establishments that were not accessible at that time. We are able to go to institutions such as CCMA if you are unfairly treated. You are able to access certain legal channels if you feel like you were done unfairly somewhere, somehow. You get a point. So these are some of the things that we should not take for granted. But I'm not saying this is sufficiently how free we are. No, it's not. But we must acknowledge these things. And after acknowledging these things, and then we ask ourselves questions. What are the things that threaten the very democratic gains, the very democratic freedoms that we have? So that is where, as young people, we must be able to. And then when we answer the question, personally, I answer the questions in my work. Say the advances that we have made are threatened to be undermined by a certain economic logic, an economic logic that reverses the gains that were attained, as a result of our democratic breakthrough, and that is what we need to guard against. I will make an example. For example, the idea of CCMA, the rise that workers gained when we attained this democracy are slowly reversed by monopoly capital, where when you go to CCMA, people have lost faith. It's like you are going to a slaughterhouse, you get a point. So these are some of the labor rights that we must defend. The rights that we were fought for, of access to education, are undermined by a neoliberal logic that says we must pay in order to access education. These are some of the things that we defend, And when we defend them, it shouldn't be like we are taking the movement. In fact, we are actually telling the movement the truth that if you don't carry out this historic mandate, if you don't defend these gains, then the movement is not worth its salt, because these are the historical missions that were fought for. So when we defend them, when certain people are actually betraying them, it shouldn't be seen as if we are attacking the movement. We are actually saving the National Liberation Project, which had certain historical ideals to attain, like free access to water, free access to electricity. So the idea is that this economic logic that I'm talking about, it's making it very difficult for us to enjoy the very freedoms that we fought for. And another example I can make is that
Before you,
logic of
before you give another example, I just want to throw something there in the mix that I would want you to try to respond to, and then we'll move to speaking about this philosophy of socialism Nomunt'Omusha. To say, people have raised arguments, really so, to say one of the things that we need to appreciate is that colonization and its uh, stepchild apartheid are legacies that stretch for over 400 years in South Africa. Is it fair for us to say, the liberation project should have dealt with those legacies within a period of 30 years? And I mean, that's not even 10% when you compare the stretch, in historical times of colonization and apartheid in South Africa compared to this 30 years of our democracy. Is it fair for people to actually, argue as if this democratic project has had 100 years? And of course, I'm not trying to undermine the challenges that have been there, some of which are subjective to the liberation movement, but some of which are objective, are influenced by, the balance of forces both internally and on a global level. So is it really fair for us to expect that in 30 years we should have caused a dent on the legacies of colonization and apartheid? And if so, have we done enough to actually cause a meaningful dent to that particular legacy? Comrade Molaodi,
Can
are
you?
you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You can respond to the question. Comrade Molaudi, I can't hear you anymore. I don't know whether it's the network. Comrade Molaodi?
Can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. You can
Yeah, can
respond
you hear me
to
now?
the question. Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Look, I will say to place any kind of demand before the ANC. They are justified. We must not calibrate people's aspirations, especially as far as the historical mission is concerned. They are justified to pose, certain critical questions as far as the liberation project is concerned. As to whether, in the context of the 30 years, we should have undermined, power relations of colonialism and apartheid, is another question. But also, what prompts these questions, according to me, is because, on one hand, you realize that these colonial apartheid power relations have not been completely undermined. On one hand, on the other hand, you have many people amassing wealth, having mentions in different cities of this country, in Cape Town, in Bloemfontein, in Durban. You get a point. So when you contrast these things, people ask themselves questions: how come certain few individuals are able to have so many mentions, while, power relations that, make our situation worse are still intact. If we were all like, for example, I'm making a hypothetical example. If we were all on the same wavelength, economically and socially, people wouldn't be posing hard questions because they would realize that we are all in the same boat. So now, some are in the boat and some are drowning. That is why people are posing these critical questions to say, how come I drown when the economic boat is so big that it can accommodate us? So that is the first part of my answer to you. The second part is that, look, uh, what we must do going forward, I think this is part of my way forward, is that the ANC must be able to exercise political power in such a way that it affirms the historical mission of liberation. There is nothing as important as political power. And that is why, when you take the case of China, the Chinese Communist Party is able to discipline capital to say, look, you can't do this, because it is against the interest of our people. That is what we need to do going forward. And I was happy because I was at the Krizani commemoration this year. And this came out very clear to say, once we take, ANC is re-elected, power must be exercised in the interest of people. It must not be exercised in the interest of a tiny minority, especially a white male, minority that is still in charge of the economy, as you said initially. That is what needs to happen.
No, thank you very much. I think
We can talk
I
about
am,
all other things because
I am, I am partially satisfied with your answer, because you're saying there shouldn't be any excuse that is used to gag people's genuine concerns. And we need to do more in order to tilt the power relations and, more broadly, the legacies of colonial and apartheid experiences in our country. But I think it's also important that as we think about this question, we have some sort of a timeline attached to it to say, when will we get to a point where uh, we have really tilted these power relations, these legacies, and put a particular timeline to it? Because if you look at China, they had a timeline to say we are going to take 100 years to completely overhaul the legacies of colonization, because you know China was colonized by the Japanese. You go to Vietnam, I think they've set themselves 200 years. So I'm saying, in as much as I take your answer and I find it useful, but it's also useful to actually think about when is the acceptable time when we can say, but it doesn't make sense that we are at this point in our independence, but the remnants of colonization and apartheid are still finding expression. But just to shift a bit from this and get to this philosophy of socialism, Nomunt'Omusha, and I want you to respond to my questions now in the context of the upcoming elections and your responses to the different manifestos that we have seen, and where do we locate this philosophy of socialism, Nomunt'Omusha, particularly heading into these national and provincial elections? What kind of interventions can we draw from this particular philosophy in order to assist us as young people to make better choices when we go to the polls during election day, but beyond that, to play a more active role in building a better South Africa? So if you could touch that on that a bit as you respond really to the question of what is this philosophy of socialism, Nomunt'Omusha? I've lost Comrade Molaodi. I think he would come back. We really apologize for this network glitches. I didn't foresee them, and you can't foresee these things. But I think it's really interesting, some of the things that Comrade Mlaudi has raised so far, to say we cannot pride ourselves with the inequalities that we are experiencing and the disparities that we're experiencing. In fact, it is those inequalities that become polarizers, and that's why when you talk to people, for example, about what South Africa looked like 30 years before and where it is hard for them to accept that distinction because it is out of those inequalities and disparities that they find discontent. And I think that's a very fair answer that he has given us in a useful intervention that says to us as young people, we need to advocate for these legacies and remnants of colonial apartheid experiences to be a thing of the history. And that starts with the kind of leaders that we choose and the kind of role that we play to keep those leaders accountable. So, Comrade Blaudi, can you just briefly tell us what is this thing of socialism, Nomunt'Omusha? What led to that conceptualization? What does it mean, particularly in the context of 30 years of our
Hello?
democracy? Yes, Comrade Blaudi, you can go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You can go ahead.
Mkar? No, thanks, my brother. Thanks a lot. Yeah. So basically, I to a certain extent, heard what you were saying. What I'm saying is that going forward to exercise political power, it that it reflects our revolutionary aspirations. Just happening in different, countries of the world we normally visit. Our leaders normally go to these countries. We exercise power on to do. People vote into power cannot be controlled by people.
Yo, Comrade Molaudi, we are really struggling to hear you. I think I missed you from the point where you were saying we need to ensure that the people that we vote in power are not handled from elsewhere, and that has become a very loud voice or a very loud thing that people are voicing out to say the kind of leaders we have today, it seems like
Into
they are
power
not acting in our
electoral
interest.
cities.
Yo, I keep losing Comrade Mlaudi. I think where he is, the network is poor. But he was really saying that we need to ensure that the people who are voted for are people who represent our interests and do not represent the interests of, you know, a minority kitchen cabinet somewhere. And this is a very interesting sort of take, because when you look at these upcoming elections and you look at all of these mushrooming political parties and who's funding them, you begin to ask yourself question, when they say they want to form part of the public representatives in the next administration, who are they really going to represent? You know, and given the fact that when we study the political economy of elections, for you to be able to participate and make a meaningful contribution, one of the things that you need is capital injection. And obviously, the people that have that capital injection in South Africa, it's private sector. So how do we really, and this is a question that we need to think about, how do we really mitigate the fact that, you know, there will always be conflicting interests from us as ordinary citizens who want to use or exercise our political right to vote for representatives versus the interest of those who are injecting capital to these political parties in order for them to be able to canvass elections and campaign and actively participate in the elections. Because in reality, we all know of the saying, there's no free lunch. If someone gives you the kind of sums that are being declared, obviously they will expect something. But equally, on the other hand, the voter who's giving you a vote will expect you to fulfill the promises that are entailed in your manifesto. So we might really need to think very hard as to how do we strike that particular balance, and also how do we actively hold those public representatives so that they are firstly accountable to us before they are accountable to their funders. Because in more often than not, it is not disclosed as to what is the agreement between, you know, the political parties and the funders. And I wish we were not having these kind of glitches that we're having, so that we can explore some of these questions further. I have lost Comrade Molaodi, and I'm not sure if he will be able to join us. And we truly, truly apologize for this. We didn't expect that we'll have these kind of glitches. We'll make sure that in our next episode, this does not happen. But I think the key takeaway from today's conversation is that, one, we as young people, we need to really be activists in the true sense. You know, do not become activists because we want to be labeled as activists, or we want to be labeled as leaders. You know, young people like to say leadership, leadership. And some of them feel when people call you leadership, it's the best status that you can ever have in society. You know, and when you look at some of the characters that we're referring to as leadership and their activism, sometimes they don't even deserve to be called leaders, but you know, they like that particular status. But secondly, is to say the last 30 years of our democracy has produced some meaningful results that have dramatically changed people's lives for the better, notwithstanding the challenges that are there, especially when you look at the civil liberties that have been employed and made accessible to people over the years. Of course, there are challenges. And we need to use those particular civil liberties to advocate for a more better future, to advocate for even better living conditions. And if we don't do that, unfortunately, the persisting inequality, poverty, and unemployment will actually undermine what we have achieved. You know, and I think one of the key messages there that is implicitly implicated is that as young people, we should also go out in our numbers in the upcoming elections to vote as part of exercising our political rights to ensure that we keep advocating for a better future. So I see Comrade Molaodi is here, so I'll just give him closing remarks so that we can end on time. I know we have had glitches, but I'll try once again to have him here, and we'll try and organize another session with him where we'll have a better connection. And remember that he's launching his book, which is in 2 volumes, Socialism Nomunt'Omusha. The launch is going to happen. The launch is going to happen at Soweto Theatre this coming Saturday on Freedom Day. Comrade Molaodi, I had lost you there a bit, so I think I'll give you a chance, to give closing remarks. Unfortunately, due to these network glitches, we could not have a more coherent conversation. But I think so far you've made some useful inputs. So in your closing remarks, I would like you to just briefly contextualize what this socialism Nomunt'Omusha philosophy is all about, and how can young people actively, participate in socializing this philosophy in their daily lives. And lastly, please speak about the
Thank you very
launch.
much.
What is going to happen? What should young people expect? Those who want to come, where can they RSVP so that we can really field that Soweto Theatre on the 27th?
Okay, no, thank you very much. In short, the volumes are about, a clarion call for young people to take responsibility of their lives. And the only way we can take responsibility of our lives is to take responsibility of the revolutionary project. On one hand, in defense of the gains that we have made, but also to advance towards a phase where there is fairness, there is equality, and there is equal treatment of everyone. So that is the long and short of. So in the text, we are actually grappling with power relations. What kind of power relations could
Uh, we seem to have lost Comrade Molaodi once again. As I said, we truly, truly apologize for this. We could not really, anticipate this, even if we had wanted to. But I think the good thing is that the platform has started, and it is really going to build on from here. Meaning, it's a start of a good thing. In English, they say a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And today we have taken that step in honor of the passing of President O.R. Tambo, who remains a giant in the history of the liberation movement, but also in the history of South Africa itself, because there is an umbilical cord link between the development of the ANC and the evolution of the South African society. So when you account for South Africa's history, there is in no way you cannot speak about the African National Congress and the role that it played. And in particular, there is no way you cannot speak about President Oliver Tambo and the role that he played in the liberation struggle against apartheid, dedicating over 60 years of his life to the liberation struggle under very precarious, gloomy conditions. He did not waver, but he fought to ensure that today we can enjoy the democracy that we have. So it is in honor of him that we launched this particular platform. And we truly invite you guys to not be deterred by the sound glitches that we have. I could see many of you were complaining about the sound. We'll make sure that moving forward, our things are on point. Every Wednesday, 6 o'clock, we are here having these particular conversations. Some of them will not be live, will be pre-recorded, but they will premiere every Wednesday. And we'll be speaking to young people across sectors of society. There will be young people who are active in political parties. There will be young people who are active in civil society organizations, young people from the academic space, young people who are public representatives, young people who are civil servants, young people who are doing international work. Because in reality, there's a lot of things that young people are engaged in that we never really talk about. And we need to really bring that work to the fore and say, this 30 years of democracy has enabled young people to actually actively participate in the formation of a better society. Today, we see young people in the legislature, whether it's in parliament, whether it's in provincial legislatures, even at municipal level, at rates that we've never seen before. Today, we see a lot of women in political responsibilities, in leadership roles in business, in civil society, which was something that you could not even think of 30 years ago. But today, those things are happening largely because of the efforts of the liberation movement led by the African National Congress. So let's gather here again next week, have more conversations. Follow us on all of our social media platforms to find out who will we be engaging next week. And as I said, you are welcome to even propose young people that you think we should give an ear in terms of the work that we are doing. And lastly, is to invite you guys once again to the launch of Socialism Nomunt'Omusha, taking an oath to the revolution, which is happening at Soweto Theatre. These books, which are a 2-volume, are written by Molaodi Wa Sekake. Unfortunately, the session did not go as planned, but we really appreciate your participation, your attendance. I mean, my live stream count is telling me that we have over 90 people and counting in this particular platform who are joining us from the different live streams that are happening across Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube channel. So thank you so much. Until we meet again next week, you guys must have yourself a blessed week. And please let us gear up to go and vote, guys. Let us gear up and go and vote. Young people are the determining factor in these coming elections. And we want you guys to go and vote. You must engage other young people and encourage them to go on the 29th and place their mark. You must be engaging on that issue almost every day. Whoever you speak to, the first thing you need to ask them, are you registered to vote? If they say no, you ask why, and convince them on the importance of exercising this particular democratic right to go and choose the government of their choice. With that said, have yourselves a good night, and we'll see you next time.